I think you could view tonight's slate for MLB DFS in one of two ways. The first one is that we are down to each team's third or fourth starters, and a lot of them are not guys we're typically going to turn to in MLB DFS. That can make things pretty tough, given that the crux of our decisions revolve around pitcher. The other way is that there's a lot of ambiguity. There are ways to play this slate, be different without being dumb. And those should be, I think, our favorite slates for daily fantasy baseball. And I think that's where I settled in on this one. I think there are some good routes to play this. There are some pitchers I might not talk about again the entire rest of the year for pitching sections who I think are viable for today. So we're going to break down the 11-game main slate for Monday night and get you ready for what should be a fun one once again. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down this 11-game main slate on FanDuel for tonight, with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. Let's dig into what the weather is saying about the slate. Did want to highlight once again the colder games on the slate. So 11-game slate, 5 of them have temperatures in the 50s for tonight. Those games are the Phillies at the Yankees. We've got the Pirates at the Red Sox, and the Diamondbacks at the Padres, A's at the Guardians, and Rockies at Dodgers. So a lot of the games actually out west, pretty cool. I said A's at Guardians, actually in Oakland for tonight. But a lot of the games out west actually colder for today, along with Phillies, Yankees, Pirates, Red Sox. So I downgrade bats in those games as a result of what is pretty cool weather for today. I would say there are still good stacks in the games out west specifically, but keep that in mind when building your lineups. In Washington, for the Rays and the Nationals, winds are out to center at 10 miles per hour. It is 69 degrees, not bad for hitting this time of year. And then in Kansas City, for the Blue Jays and Royals, winds are in from center at 10 miles per hour. Slight downgrade to bats there. But again, the weather in terms of temperature, not too bad. We'll dig into the pitching preview for this slate in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up later on today, on Monday, our Masters preview for PGA DFS on FanDuel will be up. It'll also be live on the FanDuel YouTube page. So if you want to watch along with myself and Brandon Gadula as you fill out your lineups for Augusta, head over there to the FanDuel YouTube page, 3 p.m. Eastern, to check out that. And this will go up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that as well. So just go search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. We appreciate all those 5-star ratings already. Whether your bracket is busted, still alive, or you're just looking for another way to get involved in March Madness, FanDuel has you covered. That's why FanDuel and Xfinity Mobile are partnering to give you a chance to win a share of $10,000 for the national championship game. All you have to do is answer prop pick'em questions around in-game action, inclusive of Xfinity mobile-themed questions. And the best part is, it is free to play. Fans that answer the most questions correctly win a share of the $10,000 grand prize. The contest locks tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So go to FanDuel.com now to get in on the action. To enter, go to FanDuel.com/free/contest/Xfinity mobile pick'em roll. No purchase necessary. Age and location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See full terms at FanDuel.com. Xfinity Mobile has not sponsored or offered this promotion in any way. Again, the URL there is FanDuel.com/free/contest/Xfinity mobile pick'em roll. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate. Nestor Cortez comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel. He's $10,500. Drew Rasmussen is $10,200. We've got George Kirby up at $10,000 facing the Angels. John Gray is $97,000. Reed Detmers facing Kirby at $96,000. Charlie Morton, the ageless wonder, is $94,000. Brady Singer, $92,000. Hunter Brown is $91,000. Jose Barrios is $9,000, with Kyle Bradish and Taijuan Walker as the other guys at $8,000 or higher. Now, on this slate, again, I think there are a couple different ways you could play things as far as your top pitcher. I think that Cortez is viable. I think that I do like Reed Detmers a decent amount. Just pretty tough matchup for him against the Mariners. I think when it all comes down to it, though, my favorite guy is going to be George Kirby. And Kirby's not always a guy who I was super into because there were stretches last year where Kirby let up a lot of hard contact, but that did improve down the stretch. And he did this, he made these gains while keeping the strikeouts high. I think we can use Kirby against the Nationals for tonight. The big shift for Kirby was throwing more sinkers across his final 14 starts. And the goal typically there is to improve your batted ball data. Throwing more sinkers does that. And it did seem to do that for Kirby because in that 14 start sample, he had a 36% hard hit rate allowed with a 36% fly ball rate. Good enough numbers for sure. And it's also a large enough sample of 14 starts where we can be pretty encouraged. The strikeouts in that time, still totally fine. So better batted ball data while not sacrificing strikeouts. I'll take that every time. 26% strikeout rate. It all led to a 3.22 skill interactive ERA, which is the best mark on this slate for each pitcher's most relevant sample. Not really sure what the pitch count will be for Kirby because the reports were that they would monitor his innings early in the year. But in his final public spring start, Kirby went 5 innings and had 9 strikeouts. So likely a pretty good pitch count there. Seems long enough to feel good about him at least, even if we can't feel entirely confident. Kirby's facing the Angels. That's a pretty dangerous lineup, but it's not a low strikeout lineup. I have Kirby projected for 6.22 strikeouts. That is the highest mark on this slate, and I'm willing to bank on that and put him at the top of my list for today. So George Kirby, to me, the top pitcher for MLB DFS for tonight. I do think that there is some risk with Nestor Cortes, which is why I consider putting Reed Detmers here. And I think that Detmers is very much in this discussion, but there's also risk around Detmers given the matchup. And I feel like there's enough here for me to go Cortes. But if you wanted to go Detmers, if you think that he will be lower rostered or very low rostered, I think Detmers could be a very good tournament play for tonight. Let's talk about Cortes as my number 2 option, though. He was not lights out this spring. He's also facing the Phillies, who can hit lefties pretty well. So it's not perfect, but I do like Cortes enough. One key aspect of being okay with Cortes is that the Phillies will strike out. They have a 25% strikeout rate against lefties since the start of last year on their current active roster. That is the second highest mark on the slate, or tied for the second highest mark. And Cortes can get plenty of strikeouts himself as well. He had ups and downs last year, but over his final 11 starts, did seem to figure things back out, trim back on his cutter usage in that time. Strikeout rate went to 27% in that stretch, and he let up just a 31% hard hit rate. He was not as lights out as he was to begin the year, like in May, but he was better than he was in the early summer. We saw Cortes go 74 pitches on March 28th. I have him projected for 85 for tonight, and that gets into 5.94 projected strikeouts. It's not a huge number, but it does rank third on this slate behind George Kirby and Reed Detmers. So I will take that. I think that Cortes is a fine play, but I do think that if you're thinking strictly from a tournament perspective, I do find Detmers pretty tempting. So I'm going to go Kirby 1, feel good about that. Either Cortes or Detmer, Reed Detmers number 2 for the pitchers for tournaments for tonight. I do think there is a value play you can feel pretty good about here. And it's mostly because we may not see a ton of upside. Typically, one of the big issues with a lower salary pitcher is that there is a lot of opportunity costs. They can't hang with the big guns on a slate, but that opportunity cost is lower for tonight. So I'd actually consider Cutter Crawford against the Pirates. He's only $7,000, and Crawford, not typically a big strikeout guy. He had just a 23% strikeout rate last year, despite spending a good amount of time in the bullpen. But the matchup here is really nice. The Pirates have a 25% strikeout rate against righties. That's tied with the Phillies for the second highest mark on the slate. They have a 96 WRC plus. And Crawford is stretched out because he went 83 pitches on March 23rd. So I think it's very easy to talk yourself into 90 pitches for Crawford here. His big issue is long balls because he lets up a lot of fly balls, lets up enough hard contact to hurt him. But it's just 50 degrees at Fenway for tonight. This is one of the lower temperature games. That's actually the coldest on the slate at Fenway, which will help neutralize the balls in play at least a bit for Crawford. So I'm not likely to target Crawford again the rest of this year unless he makes some pretty major tweaks early on in the rotation. But I think the stars align here to make him viable at $7,000. Good matchup, good weather, not a lot of superstars on the slate to make him a major downside as far as strikeout projection. I have him at 5.65 for tonight, which is not bad. So Cutter Crawford to me, very viable and a guy I'm willing to use in MLB DFS for tonight. So pitcher is pretty open. Let's talk about stacks here, which I think are also open enough, in large part because my favorite options are in some weather games. That does begin with our top stack, and that's the Dodgers. They are in a game with lower temperatures, and that does matter, and it is a downside, but I still think we have to have them at the top of our list. The Dodgers facing Ryan Feltner, who does avoid Coors Field for today, which is always a plus, but Feltner struggled on the road last year too. He did start throwing more sinkers down the stretch last year in an attempt to probably neutralize Coors a bit. In that time, 4.51 skill interactive ERA for Feltner, led up a 39% hard hit rate with a 42% fly ball rate. And this came with 5 of his 9 starts being on the road. He led up multiple earned runs in all 5 of those starts. He led up 3+ runs in all but 1. So he struggled even when he was on the road in his most relevant sample. Now, Feltner is still young. This is his age 26 season, so he could see improvements, but I want to see it before assuming it happens. So I think everything here combines to make the Dodgers the top stack of the night, despite the fact, again, it is a little bit colder than you would like out there in Los Angeles. We don't need to worry about platoon splits with Feltner because he lets up plenty of power to righties and lefties, which to me always makes Will Smith kind of like the apple of my eye. The problem is that like his salary is actually up there now for once. Smith's salary, $3,700. Mookie Betts is $4,000. So Smith has the exact same salary as Freddie Freeman. So I still like Will Smith, just kind of bummed that the salary's up there, but I think that I wouldn't gloss over him. So you're looking at Freeman, looking at Smith, both catcher / first base. You're probably going to have the salary to use both if you want, but I wouldn't gloss over Smith here just because he is a righty, whereas Freeman is a lefty. I think it's important to note that for tonight. For the second stack, not really sure how good Arizona's offense will be this year. And there's not a ton of big names there. They traded away Dalton Varsho. I think he rules. So that was pretty sad. But they do get a good matchup tonight. And that matchup might be enough to make the Diamondbacks a good stack. They're facing Ryan Weathers, who spent most of last year in the minors and really struggled down there. A 6.73 ERA, a 6.54 xFIP in AAA. He lit up 5 home runs in 14 2/3 innings in public spring training games. So did struggle in the spring as well. So I'm not sure the issues that plagued him last year are gone now. I don't have high expectations for Arizona. I think they could be kind of bad. The guys on the active roster had just a 129 ISO against lefties since the start of last year. So this could be pathetic. It's very possible. But again, not a ton of elite stacks tonight. Even this one's in some rough weather as well. But I think we can justify taking a swipe at them and seeing what happens. Very low salaries. If you want to stack the Dodgers, they're a good combo with them because of the low salaries here. So I think that the Diamondbacks do grade out well, despite my reservations around how good the offense will be this year. There are some fun pieces here, individually. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, the big ones. Evan Longoria should start. He's gone all 9 innings once and then 8 innings in his 2 starts so far this year. So there is some pinch hit risk once the lefty leaves, but I don't think that risk is high enough to totally rule him out. And as for Corbin Carroll, you do downgrade him against the lefty because he didn't hit for as much power against lefties in the minors last year, but the speed is the main appeal. And I think that he's fast enough where he'll probably run on a lefty too. So Carroll works despite the lefty on lefty matchup. Kyle Lewis likely to hit leadoff. He's played the full game in both the games he started, hit for a decent amount of power in the spring. He's healthy, which is not, that's kind of the big issue with Lewis is health, and he's healthy right now. So I think between Marte, Walker, Longoria, Carroll, Lewis, there should be enough guys here on Arizona to feel okay about them for stacking. It's not risk-free because they could stink, but I think given the matchup, they are a fine option for tonight. Now, with all the pitchers on the slate, looking at Kirby with a salary that's pretty respectable. Cortez is 10.5. It's a little high, but not terrible. Got Crawford there too. I think we can afford to spend up at hitter between the Dodgers. And now I think for our third stack as well, that's the Braves. And I think that they are a good third stack for us for tonight. The Braves facing Jake Woodford, who is moving into the rotation to start this year. He was a reliever last year, and in that time as a reliever, his ground ball rate was 52%. We don't typically want to stack against a guy with a 52% ground ball rate because it's harder to generate upside in that situation. It's a lot higher than we want. But that was as a reliever. He's now a starter. And when he was a starter back in 2021, in the starts he made, Woodford let up a 38% ground ball rate. So a lot lower there. I'm not sure he'll get to that low, but he might not be what he was in the bullpen last year either. Woodford had a solid spring. He had 18 strikeouts compared to 5 walks, let up just 1 home run in 17 and 2/3 innings, which is why the Braves are not higher on my stacking list. But the Braves, a 111 WRC plus against righties. They have a 195 ISO, which is tied for third on this slate. So it's not perfect by any means, but I do think it's good enough for a slate where the stacking options are just okay, I would say. So I'll rank the Braves third behind the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, but I think both the Dodgers and Braves, good spots to spend up on if you have excess salary, whether it be due to Crawford, whether it be to the Diamondbacks, whatever it may be. If you have salary to burn, I think that's where I'd want to burn it personally. And we can also trim back that ground ball rate for Woodford by upping lefties. He had a 47% ground ball rate allowed to lefties last year, whereas righties were at 54%. So I think that helps. It's not helping enough where I'm going to be super high in Eddie Rosario, but Matt Olson gets bumped up, Ozzy Albies, Michael Harris, they all get bumps up for me. So bumping up to lefties who are viable. I don't think Rosario is quite there for me, but the other guys definitely in play and definitely guys I'm willing to use for tonight. So the top stacks for tonight, the Dodgers, Diamondbacks, and the Braves. Let's go now to things to watch. Talk about a couple of pitchers I am lower on specifically due to pitch count. And those guys are Drew Rasmussen and Hunter Brown. Both those guys have very good matchups. So I understand why, if you look at the initial slate, maybe you're drawn towards those guys. Rasmussen getting the Nats, Brown facing the Tigers, but Rasmussen threw 56 pitches on March 20th, had just one start to warm up before then, so probably around 75 or so tonight. Brown had lower back tightness in his final start, or before his final start, so he had that one scratched out. Now, he did throw a sim game, but it sounds like they're very likely to have Brown on a pitch count to open the year. So Brown, Rasmussen, not guys who are considerations for me unless we get word that their pitch counts be higher than expected. I have Rasmussen for 75, Brown for 70 right now. If we get word that's higher, maybe they're in play, but for right now, I'm okay looking elsewhere at pitcher. There are a couple spots where I think that we can get left-handed bats and get a lot of upside. So maybe some mini stacks here if you're looking for one-offs. I would say those are the Royals and the Cardinals. The Royals are facing Jose Barrios, who has really struggled with left-handed batters for quite a long time now. He had very low strikeout numbers in the spring as well. So Vinny Pasquantino, MJ Melendez for the Royals, the main targets here to benefit from these struggles Barrios has had with lefties. Cardinals are facing Charlie Morton, who struggled this spring. He struggles on the road, struggles against lefties, and all those factors are combined here against St. Louis. Now, not a ton of lefties here, but Brendan Donovan, there was talk in the offseason about him changing his swing, and it kind of looks like that's legit based on spring, based on the first couple of games this year. So I'm fine buying in for $3,100. Sure, you can talk me into it. Also, it'd be a plus for Lars Nootbaar. He did miss the past couple of games with a thumb injury, so not sure if he'll go, but if he does, I'd be okay going there. So Royals, Cardinals, lefties, spots I'd be looking for one-offs against Barrios and Morton, given the issues they've had with lefties, and for Morton also on the road. Let's finish up with the dinger calls for today, and let's stick on that Cardinals offense, because the fun home run call for today is going to be Donovan. I do believe in swing changes. I think that they can be things that lead us to buying in on guys before things totally react. Like Will Smith was one of the guys who had a big swing change, led to him unlocking, I think, his final year in the minors. So I believe in Donovan. Maybe that's stupid, but I'm okay buying in on small samples personally. Donovan 31 on FanDuel. I think he is a fun home run call for today. The boring one, I will go Freddie Freeman. I know I discussed how Will Smith is more viable against this righty than other righties because the platoon splits, but it's Freddie Freeman. So we'll go with Freddie Freeman as the boring home run call. So Freddie Freeman and Brendan Donovan, the 2 home run calls for today. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot, but a lot of good stuff here elsewhere on the FanDuel Podcast Network, because in a bit, we're going to record covering the spread to break down the men's national championship game between UConn and San Diego State. Dr. Ed Feng will join me for that to break down what his numbers say about tonight's games. If you want some action on that, check out Covering the Spread. And as mentioned, the Masters podcast for the Heat Check coming up today, live at 3 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. Have fun watching the National Championship and more. We'll talk to you once again later on today to talk the Masters. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.